Welcome to episode 3, featuring your views about Alberta's economy. That is, how Alberta's regions and industries, professions and public services are adapting to the forces and sources of change, social and political, economic and technology. These forces were identified in our Megatrends report in August. If you want to know more, please visit perrykincaid.com. If you're new to Alberta, this program will serve as an introduction to the province, a place of extraordinary opportunity and potential. And if you're in Alberta and are weathering COVID, or the weather itself, and other forces impacting your family and community, business or profession, and you have doubts about the future, well, stay put. This episode 3 will acquaint you with the economy at a time when its diversity and resilience are being tested. In our first 2 episodes, we saw that the economy is in a downturn and that the impact is uneven across Alberta's regions. The Edmonton region's downturn now exceeds that of the Calgary region, which was initially hit in 2018 with the crisis affecting the oil and gas industry. The other regions are holding tough, weathering the downturn somewhat, but only somewhat better than both Edmonton and Calgary. In this episode, we look beyond location and we dig deeper to learn how Alberta's various industries, professional services, and public services are faring. But wait, some of you are new to the series, or perhaps you want a refresher. So I'll do a brief review of what we've covered so far. I'm Perry Kincaid, your host, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm passionate about Alberta, its future, and with good reason. I immigrated to Canada and Alberta in 1964, over 50 years ago, from Long Island, New York, in pursuit of a PhD at the University of Alberta in brain research. And as I tell my American friends, now left behind, there are few places on earth where hard work, family times, and networking are more rewarding. On graduation, I pivoted from academia, joining the Alberta government as a change agent. A manager charged first with developing an ecosystem for supporting community integration and development of people with disabilities. And then second, to help regionalize social services. And finally, as Director of Privatization and Funding Reform, to prepare public services and entrepreneurs ready to transfer to industry. In retrospect, success was bred over and over again by attention to data and detail and who we were serving. Let's not forget teamwork. The lessons learned were extraordinary, helping prepare me for my third career, this time in professional services as a change agent in managing consulting with KPMG. Those 12 years were absolutely rich with experience from coast to coast, and literally across North America. But after that 12 years, well, I retired. Well, sort of, under the illusion that retirement meant lots of golf, gardening, and grandchildren, what I call the geriatric G-force. But retirement lasted only about 20 minutes when someone, and I recall her name was Susan, asked me if I would help her find financing for her new company. That led to the founding of Kincaid Enterprises for financing and mentoring corporate startups. That in turn led to the founding of the Alberta Council of Technology Society, the network of networks, and another dozen years as investor, mentor, and board appointee for several startups, professions, and indeed industry associations. You can appreciate that each stage of my career contributed to the simultaneous development of personal networks. It is these networks, including you, that I am now engaging in monitoring Alberta's economic diversification. And here we are. One of the carryovers from ABC Tech has been continuing to monitor Alberta's economy by conducting an annual sentiment survey of the KEI network of over 25,000 contacts. This program is about you, your view of Alberta's economy, our jobs and services, and your views of Alberta's innovation ecosystem, including the role of government in the diversification of the economy. In episodes 1 and 2, we learned, well, for a brief review, let me show you. Overall, we saw that the province's economy was very weak. On a scale from 1 to 5, the rating was around 2.3. We also noted when we asked that you viewed the province as not very resilient or somewhat resilient at a rate of 73%, and only 21% rated the province's economy as resilient, with very few uncertain as to which way they would swing, with neutral being at 6%. Very resilient was only 2%. When we looked at changes since 2015, when we initiated the survey, the black line here, reflecting your views of economic resilience, is quite flat between 2 and 2.5, and that is continually weak, though seeing some progress through the spring of 2018, and then this significant drop since the spring of 2019 to 20, when both energy and COVID hit the province dramatically. The red line, by the way, is a reflection of the effectiveness of the innovation ecosystem, which we'll discuss further in episode 4. The most sensitive measures contributing to economic resilience were corporate investment and any factor that related to jobs. And by the way, because some of these slides are quite noisy, I encourage you to use your pause button to study them in more detail. Contributors to the overall survey were principally from Edmonton at 61%, with 22% from Calgary and other. And as you'll see, the breakdown of other is Northern Alberta, Central, and Southern Alberta. Anytime we're doing a regional analysis, we use the average for the region, so Edmonton, Calgary, and other are equal in their comparisons. This was the overall view of how Edmonton, Calgary, and the other regions fare. And as you see, Edmonton showed that his view was that the province economy was the weakest, with the other, that is outside Edmonton and Calgary, viewing it as the strongest, particularly Southern Alberta. What was contributing to the sentiment? When we looked by region, we saw that all of the regions viewed corporate investment as a primary indicator, with jobs also rating high, with a minor exception, that is, decreasing job creation was less relevant to those in the north, who viewed out-migration and corporate bankruptcies higher, and those in Central Alberta who viewed the loss of market share and personal bankruptcies higher than the decreasing job creation. How the changes differed by region since 2015, you'll see with the blue other regions outside of Edmonton and Calgary, a steady rise to the spring of 18 and then a flattening out or leveling out at neutral. You'll see in Calgary some seasonality, a rise in the spring, a fall in the fall, primarily related, we suspect, to increased drilling activity, but you'll see this slow down and flatten after 2018. And you'll see for the Edmonton region, relatively flat, relatively stable, but a significant drop between the spring of 2019 and 2020. And that is, what happens in Edmonton happens about a year after it happens in Calgary because of the dependency, we believe, as you'll see, of the province's economy on the plight of the oil and gas industry. Your comments echoed exactly that sentiment. And again, as I say, look at this in more detail by looking at your pause button, but your comments highlighted the dependency of the province on oil and gas, and to some extent concerns of the role of government in this undertaking. Now we arrive at episode 3. And in episode 3, we look in more detail at sectors, having looked at location and looking at the province overall. Those who contributed to the survey were asked initially what their top interests were. 34% cited public services and identified any one of the following 5. 26% cited professional services, and 40% cited industries. One of the interesting insights is that those that showed the most interest also saw those sectors as having the lowest resilience. Health and environment were both areas of high interest, but also rated among the lowest in resilience at the public service level. In professional services, management and infotech were of major interest, but were also identified as having the lowest resilience. This didn't hold for industries, where agriculture and tourism were rated as having the lowest resilience, with energy at a high level of interest, but not as low as the other sectors in industry. What we concluded from this is that the survey has attracted those interested and concerned about the weak status of their sector in Alberta's economy. This is a comparison of public, professional, and industries. And as you'll see, public services rated the lowest. That's the yellow. We use yellow to cite any sector which was viewed as not resilient as greater than 70%, or with the light tan coloring, anyone who rates resilient as greater than 35%. Neutral, or the level of uncertainty, we cite when it's greater than 8%. Sectors are all somewhat not resilient. Public services least, industry somewhat resilient at 32%, with uncertainty highest among the professional services. There's considerable detail here, but what you'll see in public services is not resilient and very weak throughout. As far as professional services, relatively weak, not as much as the public services, and overall at 64%, with some strength in legal services, but uncertainty in human resources and engineering. As far as industries, some strength in forestry and mining, but general weaknesses in tourism and transportation. When we look at these overall, we've seen that the province is weak. We've seen the weakest sector among this is public services. And we'll now look at how those sectors differ between regions. Again, considerable detail, so use your pause button. For public services in Edmonton, weak across the board. For professional services, weak across the board, other than perhaps legal and communications. And for industry, still pretty well weak across the board. All three of these weakest of any of the sectors anywhere else in the province. Some uncertainty in professional services at the human resources level, and then some uncertainty in forestry, which seems to be doing well, and mining, which seems to be doing relatively well, but also weak in manufacturing. When we compare it with the Calgary region, as you'll see, the Calgary region is somewhat stronger, although public services remain weak, particularly health and environment. Professional services, somewhat more resilient than other regions at 37%, with particular strength in communications, human resources, and finance, but general weakness again in infotech. And that's not to discount the weaknesses in finance, engineering, and management. As far as industries go, considerable weakness in transportation, tourism, and agriculture, but some strength in forestry, mining, energy, and manufacturing. I want to emphasize here that when I refer to strength, the respondents were asked to rate the province. They weren't asked to rate their sector or rate their region. We use that provincial rating based on where they are from and what sector they were interested in, and compare their results then with other sectors and other regions in order to get these ratings. For the other, which was the strength was the greatest, only government looked particularly resilient, and that is above the 75%, showed least resilient in the South. But most resilient was in education, health, NGOs, uncertainty in the health sector. Professional, strength across the board, that is greater than 35%. General strength in the professional services, other than some uncertainty in financing and engineering. For industries, general weakness in mining, but general strength elsewhere. When we asked for your comments, we received many, but highlighting again a false belief that oil and gas will recover to former levels is preventing companies from pivoting and retraining and diversifying. And this comment was particularly interesting. Alberta's economy is viewed as more diversified. However, it's not balanced. This comment overall, to conclude the comments, was there has never been a serious and sustained conversation in Alberta about our responsibility for the messes we've gotten into and those we're in now. Until this happens, not much will happen except our future will dribble away. Some young folks have already figured this out and are leaving now. Call them early adapters. And that brings us to the conclusion of episode 3. In the next episode, we'll begin the search for solutions by exploring your views of the relevance and roles for government and Alberta's innovation ecosystem. There are several surprises, so stay tuned. If you've got comments you'd like to make or feedback you'd like to provide, please contact me at perry@perrykincaid.com. or otherwise take a look at the website at perrykincaid.com. In conclusion, I'd like to personally thank those who have been assistants in webinar production, and that's Tom Dodd with Vision Media, Websites in Edmonton with Michelle Lessard, the Canada Institute for International Trade, Kevin McNulty, and not to forget the extraordinary survey support that I received from the Economic Developers Alberta, the Alberta Council of Technologies, AB Paul Econ. Until next week, thank you and goodbye.